Jesus says this. Fifthly, Christ's fifth conviction is every verb tense of the Old Testament is true. You say, he believed that? Yep. Watch what happens. Jesus was challenged by one of the local skeptics. It isn't new that people don't believe the Bible. They've always troubled about the Bible. And they said they weren't sure the Bible was inspired. And this skeptic asked Jesus a question about 7 husbands in succession, all who had married the same woman. Each of the husbands had died. And he ended with this impossible question he thought would stump Jesus. Which would be her husband in heaven? Boy, that sounds kind of like a Stephen King novel, doesn't it? I mean, one of these horror things of all this death and everything. But here we go. Impossible question. Jesus, how are you going to answer this? Look at chapter 22, verse 29. Jesus answered and said to them, you're mistaken, not knowing the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. But concerning the resurrection of the dead, see, Jesus was going far beyond the little quiz skeptic time and talking about the lack of the Sadducees to even believe in the resurrection. And look how he defends it. Have you not read, I'm in the middle of verse 31, what was spoken to you by God saying, amazing, Jesus in the first century, quoting the 1,400-year-old words of Moses, said they were God speaking. That's why I love reading the Bible. That's why this morning, as soon as I got my cup of coffee all set, got my Bible open, because I wanted to hear God speak. See, Jesus had the same conviction. He said, have you not read which was spoken to you by God? Verse 32, here it is. I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And then what he says is, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. How did he get that out of that verse? He got it out of back up to the beginning of verse 32. I am the God. Now, was Jesus making that up? No. Jesus is quoting directly from Exodus 3:6. When God revealed himself in Exodus, he told Moses that not that he was, but that he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, if you know anything about history, Moses lived in the 14th century, actually the 15th century BC. 1446 was the Exodus. So Moses lived 15 centuries before Christ. Abraham lived 21 centuries before Christ. Abraham was 700 years before Moses. And when God talked to Moses, God talked about someone that had lived 700 years before, and 600 years before, and 650 years before. He spoke of them in the present tense. So think about what that means. Centuries after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had died, God is still their God. And Jesus explained it was clear that they were still alive. So to answer the challenger in Matthew 22, Jesus used a tense of a verb from the Old Testament. And Jesus demonstrated his convictions that the Scriptures are authoritative, not just down to the smallest part of every letter, not just every word, not just every promise, but to the grammatical makeup of the revelation of God. Now, if you want to short circuit, process that. When you're reading the Bible, God is speaking through the words. He's speaking through the promises. He's speaking through all the prophecies. He's even speaking through the exact word that was used right down to the stroke of the pen and even the grammar. And Jesus believed that so much that Jesus used it in the defense. Well, sixthly, not only is every verb tense and every promise and every letter and every word, every one of them are the Spirit of Christ, but sixthly, every book of God's Word is true. Jesus referred to the Old Testament 64 times. He always referred to it as authoritative truth. In fact, as he defended himself as Messiah and as divine, he says in John 10:35, the Scriptures, in their totality, all the books of the Bible cannot be broken. Jesus believed all the books. And finally, Jesus believed every doctrine is true. Repeatedly, Jesus confirmed the accuracy, the authenticity, the authority of the Old Testament. Jesus confirmed the standard of marriage as we saw in Matthew 19 last time, was established by the Creator Himself in the Garden of Eden. He believed the murder of Abel was accurately recorded in Luke 11. Noah and the flood in Matthew 24. Abraham, the call of Moses in Mark 12. The manna from heaven, that Jesus miraculously affirmed when He said, I'm the bread of God. He says, I affirm that in the Old Testament, God fed 600,000 families living on a camping trip for 40 years. God fed them with bread. Do you know how many train cars? We were going down to Schoolcraft and twice hit a train. Twice. And when I was little, I used to count the cars. I got bored of counting them this time. Do you know how many train cars it would take to feed 3 million people on a camping trip in the Sinai for 40 years? Every day, it would take a train of food to feed 3 million people. And Jesus said, I affirm that. The manna came from God. I affirm those miracles. And all the other ones, the bronze serpent and everything else. Jesus confidently told all the thousands who heard Him speak, heaven and earth would pass away before any word, any letter, any promise, any prediction, any doctrine, any grammar of this book would fail. Number one, this is the Jesus book.